A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Friday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I am Josh Hennig, back hanging out with you here in the Matt Black Kia Studios. Sixers back on the court tonight. Eagles play tomorrow night. And hear both games right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll dig deeper into the NBA and the Sixers coming up at 6:20 with Bryan Toporek. He's the co-host of the NBA podcast, along with NBA writer over at Forbes Sports. Of course, this is a time of year where we're kind of in that, interesting transition from no more college football, except for the national championship this Monday. NFL going to the postseason, NBA season and interest ramping up, I should say. So we'll talk with Bryan coming up at the latest on the NBA and the Sixers today on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. From what I understand, Tom McGinnis will be back on the radio today because he wants to do TV tonight. So you'll have Tom McGinnis on your radio tonight at 7 p.m. on 97.3 ESPN, calling Sixers versus Spurs. Eagles back in action tomorrow night. And as I wrote over at 973ESPN.com, or if you have the 973 ESPN mobile app, you could have gotten the alert, which is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. The Eagles are going to be a very interesting watch tomorrow, not because they're playing for anything specific, not because this team is going to go out there and they're going to go out there and beat the Cowboys with all they got, which I know is going to be disappointing for some people out there. No, the Eagles are going to be an interesting watch because of the fact that we don't know for sure who is actually going to play. And who does play may be an opportunity for us to learn more about certain players we have not seen enough of this year. Now, we got the news today that Jason Kelce has cleared COVID protocols. And according to people who know more about these protocols than even I do, the Eagles have until 4 p.m. tomorrow for anyone else to clear. Now, this is important to keep in mind because with Miles Sanders being ruled out for the game, Boston Scott and Jordan Howard are both on the COVID list still. So there's a chance they could either or both be cleared tomorrow by 4 p.m. That's the deadline. The way it works in the NFL is you get tested in the morning. They rush your test to the lab to get it turned around in time to see if you can play. So I'm interested to see who actually plays in this game. Because, for example, the running backs, if Howard and Scott are not allowed to come back because they don't, keep testing negative, or maybe they have symptoms again, whatever the situation may be, your running backs could be Kerryon Johnson and Jason Huntley. Remember Kerryon Johnson? He was in training camp back in August. Jason Huntley feels like he's been on and off this team about 100 times in the last 2 years between the practice squad and the regular roster. Look at the offensive line. 2 players are listed as questionable in the injury report. Landon Dickerson, Lane Johnson. Now, Johnson has been listed with a rest/knee designation. So I feel like part of the reason why he's not practiced this week is in part because they're resting him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does or doesn't play tomorrow. And I'll explain why I mean both in just a moment. Dickerson, to me, is the one to watch. You go back and watch the Eagles game in Washington on Sunday, it was apparent that he was grimacing between plays. We find out this week is a thumb issue. Well, it being a thumb issue, one, makes you wonder, are the Eagles going to be extra careful with him because he does have an injury history? Now, the injury history has to do with his knees, not his thumb, obviously, but This is a guy who does have a history of being a little banged up. Do they go extra careful with him? Now, if you don't see Dickerson and Lane on the field tomorrow night, you could see recent acquisition Jack Anderson, who was activated recently, and a guy they signed in the offseason for depth purposes, LaRaven Clark, potentially even at right tackle. So those are some players you could be watching for tomorrow night. Dickerson with the thumb issue also brings in Jason Kelce, because with Nate Herbig still on the COVID list, in theory, your primary backup would be Luke Juriga. Now, even though Dickerson has experience playing center, I want to know, is that thumb on the hand that he snaps with? Because if it is, he ain't playing center, folks. Only in an emergency. So you could see Luke Juriga tomorrow night. Now, my working theory is, I don't have any inside information, but here's my working theory. I think the Eagles want Jason Kelce to keep his streak going. He has currently started 121 consecutive games at center for the Birds. I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles put the first team offense, or as many of them they can get on the field, tomorrow to start the game, but they don't play maybe more than a series. Now, I'm basing that on the fact that people like Mike Garafolo from NFL Network is, for lack of a better term, almost pounding a table, insisting that the Eagles are going to play some of their starters tomorrow for at least some of the game. And considering the fact that what Adam Kaplan brought up on Football 4 earlier with Mike Gill, that the Eagles don't have a ton of depth because some guys are on the COVID list and because some guys are injured, somebody has to play tomorrow. Now, I'm not saying Nick Sirianni is going to pull an Andy Reid, but I am saying that I wouldn't be surprised if you do see Kelce, Mailata, Lane, and maybe Jack Anderson, Sua Opeta out there for maybe a series, and then they take everyone off the field and just go straight second and third team the rest of the game. Let Kelce get his official start. Let him keep his little streak going. Get the guys a couple minimal reps. No Micah Parsons tomorrow, so you're not worried about blocking him coming after the quarterback. Cowboys won't have Diggs tomorrow. Their corner, he's out. They've already ruled him out. So you don't have to worry about one of the best interception guys in the league trying to get an interception on your quarterback. So even if the Cowboys do play the majority of their starters, which they keep saying they are, but again, I trust Mike McCarthy as far as I can throw him. I think you could see the Eagles starters out there for a little bit. Now, the reason I say, I don't know if Sirianni's going to play an Andy Reid. You may or may not remember that back in January 6, 2002, it was the Eagles' final game against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Andy Reid sent Donovan McNabb out there for one play and then pulled him for the rest of the game. So in the stat book, Donovan McNabb goes down as a starting quarterback in that game, but he didn't throw a single pass the entire game. If you go back through the record and the numbers, I did earlier today to double check my information, it was an A.J. Feely, Coy Detmer game. So with that being in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is this going to be a Gardner Minshew Reed Sinnett game? Now you may be asking, Josh, who on earth is Reed Sinnett? Reed Sinnett is the guy who keeps getting inactivated. He's inactive almost every single game. He is actually your third string quarterback. Since the Eagles traded away Flacco, he is the guy who was claimed off waivers by the Eagles at the end of October and brought in here to basically fill a roster spot and be the break glass in case of emergency guy. Yeah. So Reed Sinnett played college at San Diego, not San Diego State. San Diego. So we're going way down the rabbit hole when it comes to college football here. Now, he was a finalist for the Walter Payton Award, which is one of the top awards given to FCS players. But he had a nice career in college. He wasn't a bad player, but he's a guy who's bounced around the league, with the Bucs and the Dolphins, now with the Eagles. So you could see Reed Sinnett on the field tomorrow night, along with everyone's favorite backup quarterback / potential drinking buddy, Gardner Minshew. I also think you're going to see a lot of Milton Williams, a lot of Teron Jackson, a lot of backups. So that's kind of our situation right now. What you could expect from the Eagles tomorrow night. You could hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick on the call. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. here on your home for Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN FM. Text board is open as always. You can join the conversation at 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of CLC. And we are live as always on YouTube at 973 ESPN. As I promised, we'll dig deeper into the Sixers coming up in 8 minutes with Bryan Toporek right here on Game Night, leading you into Sixers basketball at 7 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. We will also announce tonight we are getting back to our high school player of the week, the South Jersey High School Athlete of the Week. We were doing that for the fall, and now we are beginning away the players of the season. So before the Christmas break, we awarded J.C. Landesini. He won the voting for the male athlete of the fall season. And tonight we will announce the female athlete of the fall season. And of course, people have been voting all week. We have a huge amount of votes that have come in for the young ladies here. So I'll announce the actual winner coming up at 6:50 tonight. But your nominees, as voted on over at 973ESPN.com, your nominees were Jenna Crawford of Cedar Creek. She was the #1 singles player in tennis. Sophia Day, the freshman, won the Cape Atlantic League and Atlantic County Cross Country Championship, finished 4th in the South Jersey Group 3 meet. Cameron Dirks from Mainland, she led the Mustangs with 14 goals and 10 assists, along with scoring the only goal in their 1-0 wins, 3 of their 1-0 wins. Jenna Gray of Egg Harbor Township, a sophomore, led all the Cape Atlantic League field hockey players with 17 assists, including 3 in their win over Mainland in field hockey. Also, another nominee is Carly Haddon of Ocean City. She led the Cape Atlantic League with 25 goals in field hockey. And then Summer Ryman of Ocean City, the senior, led the entire state with 62 goals in girls soccer. She also rewrote the Ocean City high school record books with 131 career goals and also had 6 in one game twice during her career at Ocean City High School. And she's considered one of the top seniors coming out of high school female soccer players in the country right now. So some great nominees. We will announce the official winner tonight coming up at 6:50. And of course, if you haven't voted already, you can, basically it's the last day, and we will announce the winner coming up at 6:50 tonight. All the nominees over at 973ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Want to squeeze in a text in here real quick. Texter says, Josh, I don't think you meant it this way, but you just said they would start Kelsey to keep his streak going. Didn't come across very well. I'm with a few others, and they said little streak. Look, little. Did I literally mean little? No. So I apologize if it came off as a little disrespectful. What I meant by it was, and I appreciate you texting in. I appreciate you listening to the show. What I meant by it was Jason Kelsey, they wanted him to get off the COVID list so he could keep the streak going. It's important to him. It's important to the organization. It's been suggested, and I don't know if this is true or not, and I'm not I'm not suggesting anything. So you can take this information however you want. But the word out there is it was convenient that Kelsey and others got on the COVID list at the beginning of the week, so they had plenty of time to get off the COVID list in time for the game on Saturday night. So the timing is something to consider. Kelsey went on the list on Monday. Today is Friday. You can come off the list if you keep testing negative and you have no symptoms. There's a possibility that maybe some of the players, they tested them on Monday to make sure they would be available for Saturday. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm not inferring anything. I'm not trying to belittle anybody. I'm just putting it out there. You have to wonder how many of these teams are doing extra testing for guys, knowing that if they do test positive, they don't have to be tested again for 90 days, which clears them for the postseason. So, for example, Micah Parsons tested positive. He's on the COVID list. Now, he doesn't need to be tested again for 90 days. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying. It's the NFL rules, not mine. You can digest the information however you may like. All right, we'll dive into the Sixers and the NBA coming up next. Take more of your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the hour on the NFL here on 97.3 ESPN FM. The text board is 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. It's the final week of the 2021 regular season with the Eagles hosting the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, it's Eagles-Dallas is what it is. This is a big game. There's nothing normal about playing against the Dallas Cowboys.
Pre-game coverage begins tomorrow at 7 p.m. Maryland Mike call all the action starting at 8 p.m. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
Matt Black Kia has a solution to your New Year's resolution. Don't drive around in a car you hate. Trade it in for something great. So bring us any trade, no matter the make, no matter the mileage, no matter the condition, and put zero down. Pay zero interest for 60 months or make no payments for 90 days. If you're currently stuck in a loan or lease, Matt Black Kia can get you released. Choose from the largest selection of certified pre-owned Kias. So why make a resolution you can't keep? Trade in your old Jeep and drive away in a new Kia with zero down and zero interest for 60 months on every 2022 Kia Stinger, or make no payments until next year.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into the loan. Excludes taxes, title, license. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details. Expires 2/6/2022. Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
It's game time Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We'll go back to the Eagles and NFL talk a little bit later in the show. Plus, we will announce the South Jersey High School Female Athlete of the 2021 season coming up at 6:50 tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. But right now, talk some Sixers and the NBA. Sixers back in action tonight versus Spurs right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom McGinnis back on your radio after having to fill in on television. So you can hear Tom McGinnis tonight. One of the best in the business right here on 97.3 ESPN. But right now, we'll talk more NBA right now. Bryan Toporek covers the NBA. He's the co-host of the NBA podcast. He is also a writer for Forbes Sports. Joins us right now here on 97.3 ESPN. Bryan, how you doing? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I see the beard is still growing strong.
Yeah, I'm rocking pandemic hair too. I was supposed to get a haircut a couple weeks ago, and then Omicron hit the NBA and Southern Maryland. So yeah, I'm getting to the point where I'm just gonna buzz it all off.
I was gonna say, I mean, you always get like a pair of clippers and put the 5 end on it and just go halfway between.
I've been threatening for a week now, and my wife is like, "No, just let me do it, and if I screw it up, then you can buzz it."
I mean, what do they say? Happy wife, happy life. So
yeah. Well, that's why it's still long for now, but we'll see. We'll see.
Well, one thing we do know for sure, Bryan, that doesn't involve your hair is the fact that the Sixers, they are slowly reclimbing the NBA standings. And I'm in no way suggesting that they're on the same level as teams at the top of the standings, but now they're getting guys back. Is it easier to judge who they are right now than what we may have said about them maybe a month and a half ago? Do we have a gauge on who and what this team is now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the case for pretty much every team in the NBA, honestly. I think December was just so weird with literally half of the league entering health and safety protocols and teams having to sign guys off the street. Tyler Johnson for the Sixers, Joe Johnson was back in the league briefly. It was just, you didn't know who was playing on any given night. It's like you almost have to throw out most of the results from December because, what do half of these games mean when you're playing an 8-man rotation and 3 of these guys have never played before? So I think, as more of the league has now progressed out of health and safety protocols, we're starting to see more squads at full strength. So I think we will get a better sense both of the Sixers and how they match up just against other teams in general, but in particular, the top of the East. I don't think they're anywhere close to Milwaukee and Brooklyn at this point, and I don't think they will be until they resolve the Ben Simmons situation one way or another, whether that's trading him or somehow convincing him to return to the team. Tobias Harris has been struggling. He had a nice game against Orlando Wednesday, but otherwise has struggled this year. I think the positive is Tyrese Maxey's breakout, and Joel Embiid is now back in full MVP form. So there are some silver linings, but if you're talking about where they stack up in the East, I think you clearly have to put them behind Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I'd say they're clearly behind Chicago at the moment. The Bulls have been really good this year. The Heat are just so banged up right now with both Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler out. It's hard to get a read on them too, but I think fully healthy, if God forbid it's a 4-5 series in the first round between the Heat and the Sixers, I would pick the Heat if they were healthy. So I think the Sixers have a lot of work to do if they're hoping to compete for a title this year.
When you think about, because you mentioned the Ben Simmons situation obviously has been this cloud hanging over them, but I want to throw something out to you because, and I'm not suggesting this should happen, but I'm just asking the question. Is it better for the Sixers to just go all in on the chips and try to trade Ben Simmons? Or should they keep holding on to Simmons and instead consider trading Tobias Harris?
Oh, I mean, I think if they can trade Tobias Harris, I would be shocked if they've ruled that out. Like, he's definitely not untouchable. I don't know if he has positive trade value at the moment, or I don't know if there's a deal out there that makes sense. Maybe you wouldn't have to attach a draft pick just to get off of him, but I don't know if there's a deal out there that will make the Sixers better involving him. Like, I don't think, just given the size of his contract, and I wrote about this at Forbes the other day, if he was earning half as much money, he would be in like the Jeremy Grant, Harrison Barnes tier. And I think a lot of teams would be interested in him and would be willing to give up something of potential value for him. But because he's on such a big contract, it's hard to make the salaries work in a trade. So like the Kings would have to give up Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield, for instance, to get him. And I just don't even think they would begin to consider that. Like, I keep going back to Tobias for John Wall might be the best case scenario, best realistic, best case scenario. And I don't think that really moves the needle for the Sixers at all. So I don't think they're going to trade Tobias by the deadline. I think if anything, if they resolve the Ben situation again, whether they get him back or they trade him for, get a playmaker in return, that could help Tobias as well. I think because of this situation, he's been put in a role that isn't going to maximize his skill set. But I think, that it's been the story all season. Like, it's hard to get a read on this team, and it's hard to know what they are at full potential because they have this $33 million albatross in Ben Simmons that is just taking up space, taking up a roster spot and taking up cap space, and they're getting absolutely nothing out of him right now.
Bryan, I've said multiple times over the last few months, and probably there's some in our audience who are fatigued of me saying this, but to me, when it comes to Simmons, I believe that the key is the Sixers have to find a team that's more desperate to change their situation than the Sixers are to trade Ben Simmons. And to me, you wrote about some of those teams at Forbes Sports. You wrote about Sacramento. You wrote about the situation in Indiana. You wrote about the Portland stuff, shall we call it, going on over there, right? Obviously, you've heard a lot over the last several months about Minnesota, right? But at the end of the day, Bryan, explain to the audience why it's very unlikely that we're going to see a one-on-one deal, because you mentioned the money. I don't see it, and I don't study the cap as deeply as someone like you does. You or a Keith Smith or you guys on the NBA podcast, but like from me on the outside looking in, I'm like, I don't see how you could do a 1-for-1 trade at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to find someone who aligns both contract value wise and then just value wise as a player. So like Ben for CJ McCollum has been a popular idea dating back to last offseason, but there's been multiple reports saying the Sixers just aren't that high on him. So I don't think they would do, the Blazers, if they were amenable to such a deal. And I think it was Shams Charania of The Athletic reported at one point, or it was either him or Sam Amick of The Athletic, but they reported, the Blazers had approached the Sixers about McCollum plus a draft pick plus one of their young players, whether it was Anthony Simons or Nasir Little. Sacramento, like De'Aaron Fox would be the obvious, 1-for-1 swap. But again, there have been reports, Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report has said, he's not sure that the Sixers consider De'Aaron Fox to be that much of an upgrade over what Tyrese Maxey is doing right now. So I think if you're looking for potential just 1-for-1, Ben Simmons for Jaylen Brown would be probably the best case scenario from the Sixers perspective, but I don't think Boston would consider doing that without additional sweeteners, whether it's Maxey, Thibault, draft picks, some combination of that. Unless, things are just going off the rails in Boston. So maybe they just decide they really need to shake this thing up. But I think that's probably more likely in the off season. Like they'll try to tinker around the margins at the trade deadline. And then if that doesn't work, wait until the off season. And that's when you make the call. Do we need to break this Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum thing up?
You mentioned the Jaylen Brown thing. Obviously, there's a lot of smoke going on in Boston. How realistic is the Jaylen Brown stuff to you? Because I feel like there's a lot of times we hear names, right? And people get really excited about those names. Like, whether it's anybody, like for example, when Woj talked about Ben Simmons on Christmas Day, people were like, Woj talked about Ben Simmons. You know what I mean? Like, people get so excited about any time anybody mentions some of these guys. So, for the fans out there who are like, whether they're singing their car, they're like there's grabbing this like, I want Jaylen Brown for Ben Simmons. Like, how realistic is a Jaylen Brown leaving Boston situation?
So I think that there's just been a lot of smoke about it this season, like more than you would expect if there was nothing behind it. So that was, Tim Bontemps of ESPN had a report in late November where he had quotes from multiple executives kind of casting doubt about this. And Jake Fisher has been teasing at this as well. He said, like, I think in the next 12 to 18 months, they are going to break that duo apart. Now, whether it's for Ben Simmons or for someone else is the question. That comes down to what Boston wants in return. Like, if they want more of a playmaker presence, which I think they would, and if they want someone who's defensive minded and they don't necessarily put a premium on, okay, we can live without, Jaylen scoring. We can go from the downgrade scoring wise from Jaylen to Ben because of what Ben brings playmaking wise defensively. They might be amenable to that. But I think if Jaylen Brown, if Brad Stevens, the Celtics president, says we are willing to trade Jaylen Brown, I think 29 other teams are going to call the Celtics and at least inquire about what the cost would be, because Jaylen Brown is just such a seamless fit anywhere. And my co-host and I, Morton Jensen, we just actually finished recording a podcast earlier today. And we talked about Atlanta, who obviously is sore subject in Sixers land, but coming off of the Eastern Conference Finals run, they've been pretty disappointing this year. They're below 500 right now. Their GM just ripped them apart on the radio this week, is saying, like, I don't know if I should have brought everyone back. Like, I don't know if I brought a competitive roster back, and I have to make some major decisions ahead of the trade deadline, which is basically a month from now. So, a team like Atlanta can put together some pretty interesting packages with the veterans that they have, Danilo Gallinari and Bogdan Bogdanovic, and then some of their young guys, DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, Onyeka Okongwu. So again, it comes down to what Boston wants in return. Like, do you want this 2-for-1, 3-for-1 with a veteran who can help you win now and then another high upside prospect? Or do you want more of a known quantity in Ben Simmons? So I can't predict either way because I'm not Brad Stevens, but I think, I think Ben does have more trade value than a lot of people would expect, given, the few details of potential trades that have been thrown out there. It just sounds like Daryl Morey is shooting for the moon.
Bryan Toporek joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at @Toporek. He's the co-host of the NBA podcast. We just mentioned they just recorded new episodes dropping tonight. He also writes for Forbes Sports about the NBA. Now, you mentioned, first of all, we got to remind people, Brad Stevens has barely been on the job like a year. Yeah. So it's like nobody knows what Brad Stevens is going to do. So, this is not unique to you. This is everybody. So, anybody who says they know what Brad Stevens is going to do is probably trying to sell you some swampland in Florida. But, the deal is with me, though, is that I wonder when Coach Udoka comes out and says about leadership, right? Mm-hmm. The weird stuff coming out there with the stuff that Brad Stevens has said and what Udoka has said, and the players have said, well, Marcus Smart said over a month ago, right? Like, there's a part of me that's curious to find out, because you mentioned about Daryl Morey and how they value Ben Simmons. Which player ends up getting the better return? Is it Ben Simmons for the Sixers, or is it Jaylen Brown for the Celtics?
I would guess Jaylen Brown, again, just because of the plug-and-play nature of him, where Simmons has just such defined strengths and weaknesses that I think that is going to limit his market to some extent. I don't think all 30 teams have called the Sixers. I know, like, there have been, at this point, pretty much every team has been linked to him at some point or another, but I don't think every team is offering a realistic package. It's more just like, hey, what does this guy cost? I think because Jaylen Brown is more of a seamless fit everywhere, Boston would probably get more for him, but it's a fair point you bring up. It's a weird situation in Boston because Brad Stevens was the coach for so long and then transitions to the front office. So, most front office executives aren't around the team in the locker room on a day-to-day basis. They won't see that side of it. But Brad Stevens now has the perspective from both sides of having coached these guys for so long and now moving away and being a little bit more detached. Like, maybe he did see something in the locker room last year that has carried over to this year. And he knows, all right, this formula just isn't working. And maybe we do need to shake things up. Or, conversely, maybe he's like, hey, I coached these guys. We got to 3 Eastern Conference finals in 5 years. Like, we just need to, figure things out. We want to keep these 2 guys together because they're our 2 stars and we've seen it work together. We just need to figure out the rest of it now.
One of the teams I want to ask you about as well, I mentioned them just momentarily earlier. To me, Minnesota is a fascinating situation because they have a new ownership group coming in. Apparently, Mark Lord and Alex Rodriguez, according to reports, are like, we want to build a winning franchise. We want to change the culture. And then A-Rod gets the team fined because he has everyone come to his house in Florida. So, which I think is a hilarious story in of itself. But still, if they're serious about changing things, and if they're serious about building around Karl Anthony Towns, we already gave him his best friend, D'Angelo Russell. If you're serious about building around him, offering Malik Beasley and some pieces in a trade isn't going to get that done.
Right.
So, Bryan, I want to know, what is your perspective on Minnesota? Because to me, Minnesota might have to make a decision between Cat and Anthony Edwards at some point, because there's no way, if they want to build this team sooner than later into a championship contender, they're going to either trade his best friend, him, or Edwards to get what they really need, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't think D'Angelo Russell, we've heard so much about this list of 25 to 30 guys that the Sixers are willing to trade Ben Simmons for. I would be surprised if D'Angelo Russell is on that list. I would guess Anthony Edwards would be, but I don't think D'Angelo Russell would be. And the Timberwolves, they're benefiting from, this is like the first down year that the West has had in more than a decade. But right now, because there just aren't a ton of great Western Conference teams, the Timberwolves are 9th right now in the West at 18-20. So they may be actually feeling kind of decently about their trajectory, which could decrease their motivation to overpay for Ben Simmons or even get involved, deep into the Ben Simmons conversations. Whereas teams like Sacramento and Portland might be feeling a little bit more desperate. Reports from earlier this year said they didn't want to trade Towns, Edwards, or Russell for Ben Simmons. They want, as you mentioned, they want to do like Malik Beasley and pieces, which definitely that is not what the Sixers are looking for. So if they were hoping to get Simmons for that, I think it would have to be a 3-team deal where they sent that stuff elsewhere. That team sent, player X to Philly for Simmons, and then Simmons would go to Minnesota. But I don't think Minnesota is the most likely landing spot for him at this point, even though I think if they do manage to keep those 3 guys and add him, that would be a pretty great top 4.
I mean, that would be insane. I mean, if they find a way to pull it off, then, well, first of all, who's even the GM in Minnesota now? It's not Rosas. He resigned or got fired,
yeah, I think
right?
It's Gupta, I believe. I think it's Sachin Gupta.
Okay, so the guy used to be with the Sixers, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, then he steals the title to me from Morey as most creative trader. If he finds a way to get Ben Simmons and keep those 3 guys, he earns the crown. You know what I mean? But
yeah, the only way he does it is if he gives up like every draft pick under the sun, probably sends it to OKC since that's all they want anyway. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander comes to Philly. We're all happy.
Really quick before I let you go, does Sam Presti have an end game with all these picks? Like I really want to know, is Sam Presti, is he just hoarding picks like John Gruden used to hoard quarterbacks? Or does he have some master plan that we don't know about where he's going to build another super team out of nowhere?
Yeah, Morton and I actually just talked about this on our last pod because he and I got into a DM debate the other day where he's like, are we sure we still feel good about OKC's rebuild? And I'm like, dude, we did this before with the Sixers. We are 1.5 years into this rebuild. And then I went down the list of Sixers from the 2014-15 season, like the leading minutes getters. It was like Michael Carter Williams, Nerlens Noel, like Tony Roten, just like a bunch of guys who did not factor into the long-term plan. So, I mean, I've said from the beginning with OKC, they are starting from a better place with their rebuild than the Sixers did. You know, they got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and just every draft pick under the sun from the Clippers in the Paul George trade. And they got stuff for Russell Westbrook as well. They got stuff for Chris Paul. So whereas the Sixers were starting basically from scratch because they had given up everything for Dwight Howard, the Thunder have a lot. And now it's just a matter of like, now we need to actually fill in the pieces. So Josh Giddey, who they drafted 6th overall, looks pretty good so far. It's hard to really say how good he's going to become, but I think he's at least a solid starter, good rotation piece. Lou Dort is another good rotation piece. They have, again, like multiple picks pretty much every year. So they're just going to have a ton of flexibility. And I think that's what we're underselling a bit. There's no guarantee that they hit on those picks or they hit on the moves that they make, but I'm not willing to hit the panic button for them yet. Like I was a very pro process person, so I can't then go to OKC and be like, oh my God, they're a year and a half in and they're terrible. They should hire a Colangelo. I'll say that out of spite, but I think I said until 2023 offseason, I think that's when it's really fair. If they have made no progress between now and then it gets to be fair to start questioning like, all right, where are we going here? But considering how quickly things turned for the process Sixers, if OKC gets another top 5 pick this year, hits a late round pick, like gets a Desmond Bane or something like that, who's just completely altered Memphis's trajectory. It only takes 1 or 2 big hits to really propel you forward. So I think, OKC trading Sengun looks bad in retrospect, but that could turn out to 2 first-round picks down the line. So it's just like it's hard to evaluate. I just want to give them an incomplete for now and check back in a year and a half.
Makes sense to me. Bryan Toporek, he's the co-host of the NBA podcast. Download it, subscribe, give it the 5-star review, because you do that on Spotify now too. It's not just on Apple. You can give podcast review ratings on Spotify now too. So just want to remind people that it's like a new feature that happened like a month ago, apparently. So I learned this like a few weeks ago. I was like, oh, you can rate podcasts on Spotify too. You actually can search podcasts and sort them by their rating too. Spotify's getting real fancy. They're really trying to like up their game for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But anyway, the NBA podcast, Bryan Toporek is the co-host. Follow him on Twitter at @BToporek. And as I retweeted earlier, check out his latest for Forbes Sports covering the NBA. Bryan, appreciate you jumping on today.
Of course, Josh. Happy to come on anytime.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, as always, being brought to my friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Balance Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. We'll wrap up the show, come back on the other side. Sixers Spurs tonight at 7.
It's Sixers basketball tonight on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
B with a step-back shot on Harrell. It's good. Nice touch. Feathery jumper. 16-footer counted.
The Sixers host the San Antonio Spurs.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
Matt Blatt Kia has a solution to your New Year's resolution. Don't drive around in a car you hate. Trade it in for something great. So bring us any trade, no matter the make, no matter the mileage, no matter the condition, and put 0 down. Pay 0 interest for 60 months or make no payments for 90 days. If you're currently stuck in a loan or lease, Matt Blatt Kia can get you released. Choose from the largest selection of certified pre-owned Kias. So why make a resolution you can't keep? Trade in your old Kia and drive away in a new Kia with 0 down and 0 interest for 60 months on every 2022 Kia Stinger, or make no payments until next year.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 or 2 credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 per 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financed into new loan. Excludes taxes, title, license. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattkianj.com for complete details. Expires 2/6/2022. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Yes, Miss Tubbs. No problem. I'll call someone about the plumbing.
One of Beatrice's properties needs a
This week's featured bet is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. This Sunday, take over 44.5 in Rams versus 49ers. Bet all the action in style at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night. I'll get some of your thoughts and comments in just a bit. First text board is open as always at 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks for we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. Before we get to any of that stuff, as well as some thoughts and picks on the NFL weekend, of course, we'll be back on Sports Bash Saturday tomorrow here on 973 ESPN as well. Following Billy Schweim in the locker room, Billy's broadcasting live this Saturday from the Hollywood Cafe and Bar over in Woodbury Heights from 10 to noon. His guests tomorrow include Eagles broadcaster Mike Quick. So you can hear Mike Quick on Billy Schweim's show tomorrow morning. Excuse me. I'll be on at 12 tomorrow. And then the Eagles game tomorrow night on 97.3 ESPN FM. So we got you covered all weekend long, as well as a triple header of football action on Sunday. We have Ravens Steelers is the first game of the triple header, followed by 49ers versus Rams. Triple blank there. At 4:25 is the kickoff, and of course, Chargers Raiders is the Sunday night game. All football weekend long here on 97.3. As promised, I wanted to bring you guys the winner of the voting. First of all, incredible record turnout in terms of the voter. So since we started doing the South Jersey High School Athlete of the Week voting a couple months ago, this was the second most voted on vote of any of the Athlete of the Weeks, of any of the Athlete of the Season votes. So shout out to all the parents and everybody who got involved in the voting. The winner of the South Jersey Female Athlete of the 2021 fall season goes to Jenna Gray of Egg Harbor Township, the sophomore-led All-Cape Atlantic League field hockey players with 17 assists, including 3 in their win over Mainland. She also scored 12 goals, along with a hat trick this year against Bridgeton. So congratulations to Jenna Gray, coming in second place in the voting, because it was a dead heat for about 2 days. Jenna Crawford came in second. Jenna Crawford, she is the one of the best tennis players in the state. She was 19-0 for Cedar Creek this year as a senior. And coming in third in the votes was Cameron Dirks. Cameron Dirks led the Mustangs with 14 soccer goals this year and 10 assists as well. So congratulations to those young ladies. Also congratulations to the other nominees. Freshman phenom Sophia Day from Mainland of cross country fame. Also congratulations to Carly Hannon and Summer Ryman of Ocean City for phenomenal years as well. And we'll be back with the weekly high school athlete of the week for the entire winter season starting next week over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Over on the YouTube channel at 973 ESPN, Drew chimes in and says, I don't care what Herm Edwards says, we should lose this game. Anyone who thinks the Eagles need a moral victory can go sit through the Eagles-Cowboys game before the 2017 Super Bowl run. Well, here's the thing, Drew, and I appreciate you chiming in and watching the show. Here's the deal. What Herm was saying is completely different than what's going on tomorrow, because I was listening to a podcast where Chad Pennington was talking to Trent Dilfer, and he was explaining to Trent that the reason why Herm said that was because he was trying to change the culture and the attitude in the Jets organization. Now, obviously, Herm didn't have a ton of success in New York. That's why he eventually was let go, and he had to go to Kansas City, and now he's at Arizona State. Tomorrow's game, to me, is a byproduct of the NFL insisting they need to expand their schedule. So there's no moral victory needed. There's none of that stuff going on to me, Drew. It's a balancing act between trying to keep guys healthy and ready to go for the postseason. And keeping them ready to go is also getting them reps. Almost nobody practiced this week. It was almost entirely walkthroughs all week for the Eagles. So for the Eagles, you got to have this balancing act between getting guys ready for the postseason and keeping them healthy for the postseason. So it's a catch-22 going on there. By the way, you heard my pick of the week over at FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel Casino in Atlantic City, our featured bet of the week. We are 11-5 on the year so far this year. I'm going over in the Rams 49ers game. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. I really like that over in that game. The other number I really like going into this weekend, I can't believe I'm saying this. I like the Bengals still to beat the Browns even without Joe Burrow out there. And of course, all of our picks each week, we'll dive deeper into them tomorrow. It's brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. Bet all the action style all season long at the state-of-the-art FanDuel Sportsbook. We're off the Boardwalk Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey, it's Billy Schwein from The Locker Room. Join me and former Eagles linebacker Brad Quast as we broadcast live from the Hollywood Cafe and Sports Bar this Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on Route 45 in Woodbury Heights, New Jersey. We will be giving away Devontae Smith official Eagles jersey to the biggest Eagles fan in the crowd, courtesy of Pro Image Sports and Fan Treasures. So join us at the Hollywood Cafe and Sports Bar on Route 45 in Woodbury Heights, New Jersey. Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon, it's The Locker Room with Billy Schwein on 97.3 ESPN.